On today's Locked On Thunder podcast, are the Oklahoma City Thunder the best team in the NBA? Josh Giddey bouncing back against Portland. What does that mean for the future of this season? We'll talk about it all on today's show.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am your host, media member, editor-in-chief over at thunderousintentions.com, Rylan Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. On today's show, brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 moneyline bet by visiting FanDuel.com/lockedon. To get started, we're talking about if the Oklahoma City Thunder are the best team in the NBA. Josh Giddey has a massive bounce back, getting his 9th career triple-double against Portland as the Thunder embarrassed the Blazers. And what stood out, even in garbage time for the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I think it continues to be fair to wonder if this Thunder team is the best team in the NBA. And you can look at the expectations. You can look at what is supposed to be happening right now in this league, what's supposed to happen for young teams. But against Portland, that was another test for this team and another adjustment that they had to go through. Something that they struggled with a week ago whenever they beat Boston at home, went on the road to play Atlanta and could not handle a back-to-back with travel. They got that same opportunity 7 days later and looked completely different in that setting. And then those things happen, like what happened in Atlanta, even happened to Boston, who I think most people would say is the best team in the NBA. I would still say Boston is the best team in the NBA, but it's at least a conversation to be had after what we've seen through the first 30-something games for Oklahoma City, which I don't think anyone thought would be possible at this point for this Thunder team to be in the conversation for the best team in the NBA, or especially even just one of the best teams in the NBA. So clearly nobody is going to crown Oklahoma City for beating this terrible Portland team, or even Scoot Henderson, of course, has looked awful all year. I still think Scoot Henderson will, eventually become a really great player in this league. You saw flashes of it throughout the season, but he shot 19%. The entire Portland team shot 27% from the floor, shot 22% from three, and were just outmatched in this game. The Thunder once led by 62 points, and they led, wire to wire almost. Portland got the opening tip and went up 5 on a 5-0 run, and after that, it was over, and it was all Thunder basketball. And so when the Thunder shoot 57% from the floor, 40% from three, 86% from the free throw line, they're going to win a lot of games. And they've done that this year. They've been one of the most efficient teams in basketball. Portland, you're not going to see this very often, won the turnover battle 12-9 and got beat by 40 points. But with the Thunder's ability to play make and expose defenses, their offense is going to be able to get them to the next level. We talked about leveling up on the last show and how they're using Chet better, how they're using this assortment of talent better on the offensive end. And we know what they're capable of defensively. Although things did wane last week, they've turned them back around, and they've really kind of done a 180, which goes back to what we were saying of even Boston, who I think, like most 99% of people, would have Boston as the best team in the NBA. They haven't lost a home game all season long. Even Boston was blown out, like just obliterated on the second night of a back-to-back, and they had a schedule loss. Now, their schedule loss came against the Milwaukee Bucks, which feels a lot better than having it against Atlanta. But still, those type of things just happen. Milwaukee is not 50 points better than Boston. But on the second night of back-to-back, with travel involved, it certainly could look that way. But the stats of this Portland game are fun to dive into because it was, really a historic game. I mean, it's historic in a multitude of reasons, with the third quarter margin of victory, with the total margin of victory for Oklahoma City being the largest that it has been in franchise history, only OKC era, of course. Points in the paint, 70 to 30. Second chance points went OKC's way, but only by 1. And then fast break points went OKC's way by 3. While the stats are interesting, and we're going to dive into Josh Giddey's triple-double, dive into what Shea was able to do, because I think that Shea quietly had one of his most efficient games of the year, especially whenever you consider his rotational change. The box score and the game stats don't really matter about the story of this game. The story of this game was continuing to see the uncommon maturity from this team. Like, that was a maturity test from Oklahoma City. You're checking yourself compared to what everyone has said and agrees is a disappointing and unacceptable level, even with all the excuses involved for that last road trip where you go 2-2 and lost to some pretty mediocre basketball teams. You got to test your mettle after facing that. You got to see this team make yet another wave of adjustments. Like, they've done this all year where they struggle at one area, then they're able to turn it around. This is the most recent example of it. They've learned to now manage an NBA schedule. They're going to have to keep doing it. This is in the midst of a brutal January. They're playing 5 games in 7 nights. They're playing back-to-backs every other day, and it's going to be really grueling and really tough and continue to do so. But seeing this young team be so uniquely able to grow game to game is as impressive as their year-over-year leap. Seeing Chet Holmgren adjust every time he plays a different big, the same big twice in a row, he's able to figure out new ways to exploit that matchup. You saw him get better against Jokic game after game, get better against the Cavs bigs, game over game, and all these teams that he's played twice, he's gotten better at. You've seen this Thunder team start the year and they couldn't hold on to big leads at all. Now they're able to extend leads and lay the haymakers and knock teams out. You saw this team not be able to handle a back-to-back last week. Now they handle it better than you could ever expect a team to handle a back-to-back. And a lot of that was just due to the quality of team that they are, but also the mindset that they go into it, as Shea said after the game, that they wanted to come out, wanted to make a statement about how you're supposed to play in those moments where you're playing on a back-to-back with all of the distractions that come with it, where you're not getting in until 4 a.m. But they wanted to make a statement, and they did that by blowing out Portland. We can continue to put qualifiers on this team, put qualifiers on what they're able to achieve or should be able to achieve, but they continue to blow right past those things. It's still a long season. There's still an entire second half of the regular season to go. I still believe the playoffs are a different ball game. But every time you've tried to limit this Thunder team, they've not allowed you to. They've broken through those expectations. The expectation this year was to be in the top 6, and hey, that'd be a really good season if the Thunder could survive this Western Conference and be in the top 6. Even for as muddled up as it still kind of is right now in the Western Conference, and will be all year long, where only one bad run separates the Thunder from being a play-in team, because the first play-in team at the 7 seed is New Orleans, and they're 4.5 back of the first place. They're 4 games back of Oklahoma City. 4 games is not a lot. That's if you let that road trip spiral, that's 4 games right there. The Thunder have done a unique job as a young team, though. They haven't lost more than 2 in a row all year long. Think back to last year's team, who accomplished so much and did so many great things. They went on multiple 4-game losing streaks, a 5-game losing streak, and they dropped multiple games that they shouldn't. This team's ability to snap out of cold streaks and build on their hot streaks separates them from not only last year, but separates them from almost every other team who's been in their position as this young collection of talent. I think that the Thunder have a really good argument for being the best team in the NBA. I would still give it to Boston. I think they have a good argument for being the best team in the Western Conference, and the argument is they've done it. If you just look at what this team has accomplished this season and put it all on paper, the teams that they've beat, Minnesota, they've beaten Denver multiple times. They've beaten, of course, Golden State multiple times, for whatever that's worth. I don't know if Golden State's terrible this year right now, but still, that's a little bugaboo for the Thunder. They've beaten Boston. They've beaten Minnesota, the Clippers, who are the hottest team in basketball, it feels like, with their 9-game winning streak heading into that game, and they've played so well since the James Harden trade, since they've kind of regained their footing after that deal. They've played the top teams and beat the top teams. The only team that's really given them trouble, they played Dallas, beat Dallas, is Sacramento. They really, really struggle with Sacramento, and that's a matchup that I don't think anyone in Oklahoma City would want right now. But other than that, they've answered the call to every matchup. And so they can only play who's in front of them. They can only go with the cards that they're dealt. But the Thunder to this point have made a compelling case for the top team in the West, compelling case for top team in the NBA. And I just continue to fall back on what we've discussed on this show of, if your only hesitation with this team is their youth, that's not really good enough. And yes, the rebounding is an issue. But every team has an issue. Every team has something they need to build on and improve upon. There is not a perfect team in this NBA. It's why everyone kind of views this title window as being so open right now, and why I think that the trade deadline could get really interesting with so many teams feeling in it this year. It's for that reason that there is no perfect team. The Thunder's weakness is the rebounding, and that is glaring. And the second chance points off of it are gonna ruin some games for them, both in the regular season and in the postseason. But it's how many other things that they can do to counter that and to mask that allows them to be so successful, because they have been successful despite that rebounding woes and those rebounding woes. And even when they win the rebounding battle in games, they lose the second chance points still. So that's going to be a constant issue until something changes. Probably with the roster at this point, I think that we've seen a large enough sample size to say that this current roster is always going to struggle rebounding. Is always going to struggle giving up second chance points. It's going to be reliant upon creating turnovers to flip the advantage back to Oklahoma City in transition. But still, this Thunder team, despite that flaw, has one of the best cases in the NBA for being the best team, even though I would still go Boston. But has Josh Giddey figured something out? We'll talk about that coming up. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel's great. You should go there right now, FanDuel.com/lockedon. That is FanDuel.com/lockedon. Check them out today. Whenever you do, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets, win or lose, when you place a $5 bet. Very cool, very good offer, because this is a very good time to check out FanDuel. With FanDuel, you can bet on the NBA. If you only care about the NBA, that's perfectly fine. You can just bet on the NBA. You can bet on the NFL with the playoffs happening right now, starting out with Super Wildcard Weekend, college basketball, NHL, everything in action you can find at FanDuel with spreads, over-unders, prop bets, and more. Check it out at FanDuel.com/lockedon, FanDuel.com/lockedon. We're back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Has Josh Giddey figured something out? It's no secret that Josh Giddey to this point has been struggling, but in this game against Portland, he was near perfect. The one blemish was a turnover, but besides that, he had 13 points in this one, 10 rebounds, all of which came on the defensive end, and 12 assists with 3 blocks, including a type of Jeremy Grant. Overall, Josh Giddey in a vacuum did exceptionally well on both ends of the floor. I do not think that this one game has changed everything. I think it could be used as a springboard to change everything. It could be used as a confidence gainer. It could be used as a momentum shifter. But this specific game, I think that there are more reasons why it happened than just he figured something out dramatically different. Talking strictly on the court, Josh Giddey is a good, talented basketball player just by himself. Now, there are constructs of lineups and of defensive coverages that make him look like a not good basketball player, which we've seen throughout this season. What Portland does with their zero, absolute nothing presence in the paint and their willingness to let you play small and not have a physical presence, their willingness to let you get inside and score at the rim, and their willingness to just be lackadaisical on offense, which results in deflections and results in, of course, being able to push the paint in transition and push the pace in transition because they're not trying to get back off of misses. They're not trying to get back off of turnovers, which only had 9 of, but still, they're just not in any sort of urgency mode. And let's face it, they're also not trying to scheme their way to a win. And that's not a shot at Chauncey Billups. They've just got bigger fish to fry than scheming their way to defend Josh Giddey so they win a basketball game, right? So Portland's mindset and team construction, I think, played a massive part of why Josh Giddey was this good in the game. However, there were also things that I think that Josh Giddey can take and implement into every game, no matter how the team's defending him, no matter who's on the floor, any of that. But it must be said that before we talk about Josh Giddey's great game, Portland is the perfect matchup for Oklahoma City to play the way they want to play. They can put any lineup on the floor and not be overmatched, not be oversized, and not be out physical. And so that lets them push the pace in transition. That lets them make up the rebounding battle. That lets them do all those things. Now, Josh Giddey, again, near perfect game from him. The only mistake he made was one single turnover. And for the usage that they kind of put on him in this game, that's expected. And it was a low catch that he had that was just batted away and stolen away. And it allowed Scoot Henderson to go and have a fast break. But the difference from Josh Giddey in this game and why he was so successful in conjunction with Portland's bad defense and everything else, he found the balance that we talked about on Wednesday of being decisive but under control. When he wanted to go score at the rim, he didn't just put his head down and ram right his way to the rim and just ill regard for whatever's happening around him, he's going to try to shoot the ball at the rim, predetermining his next step. The difference he made was he kept his options open. On his way to the rim, he continued to use his high-level vision to try to find the advantage. And the advantage might be to take that shot, but the advantage also might be to kick it out to an open teammate and make passes that, really Josh Giddey, and you can throw in Micic in this game too. We had a great, couple passes. Those two guys are like the only players on the roster who can make some of those passes that those two guys can make. I mean, it is what it is. So he found that balance of being under control while being decisive, because previously he was way too indecisive. Then he went way too decisive, and now he's trying to walk it back a little bit, I think, with finding that soft touch. Now, another area where he really improved is trusting himself as a transition option. Something that has been night and day difference for Josh Giddey, and what has really heightened the poor play at the beginning of this season has been his lack of confidence as a live dribble passer and his lack of confidence to be the one to bring the team up the floor in transition, because that's where he's going to make his best plays. You go look at Josh Giddey's best plays of his career, and even in this season, it's been off of live dribble passes. And so when he's the one pushing in transition, and you have all these weapons around him, like a Chet, like an SGA, like a J-Dub, who are fantastic at filling the lane, who are fantastic at scoring in transition, and can keep a defense off balance, it just makes everything run more smooth. So his pace and his control were the two biggest things. But then also his engagement defensively was a lot better. And, again, Portland doesn't really care about this game, but to tie up Jeremy Grant, to plug the gaps very well when playing off ball, all those things helped the Thunder. He helped the Thunder on that end of the floor. And it wasn't just the 3 blocks. It was showing in the gaps. It was switching. It was getting to the boards, boxing out, getting rebounds. He did those things to allow himself to be serviceable. And that's all Josh Giddey has to do. Josh Giddey is a terrible point of attack defender. He's never going to be good at it, but he can be serviceable. And if you're serviceable on that end and ever figure it out on the offensive end, consistently and sustainably, then you have another, good basketball player on this roster. He has not been a good basketball player to this point in this NBA season, but we've seen him be a good basketball player previously on a lot of different stages in the NBL, in FIBA, and in stretches in the NBA. We've seen him be a really good basketball player. So I'm not going to say that this Portland game allowed Josh Giddey to figure something out, or allow Josh Giddey to take a leap, or allow Josh Giddey to do anything dramatic. I think that it should give him confidence on the court, I think that it showed that that player that can really play this style of up-tempo basketball is still in there. But he's got to figure out a way to be this impactful. And obviously, 5 for 5 shooting and a triple double and 12 assists and 10 rebounds. That part of the stat sheet is not sustainable. But be this level of an impact player when the game slows down, when defenses are scheming to put their big man on Josh Giddey and to just kind of roam around, when it gets more difficult and crowded in the paint and there's more resistance. Everyone on the entire Thunder team could just walk their way to the rim. No one cared. No one cared on Portland. It's how you get down by 60. It's how you lose by 1 billion. But Josh Giddey played exceptionally well in this game. I mean, the touchdown pass to J-Dub to put the Thunder up 40 was awesome. He did a lot better in this game, and it's only one game, but did a lot better at using his body as a weapon for him, as a scorer, and getting into the paint harder than he usually did, and it resulted in an uptick for him, as an offensive weapon, but also at the free throw line. 3 free throw attempts, a couple conversions at the line, 4-and-1s, just really, really good from Josh. I think that if you can get that level of engagement every night and that level of trust in himself to be a live player, it changes a lot for what Josh Giddey can do, because he shot the ball really well from December till now. So that part of it is coming around. It is what it is. You can wait for the other shoe to drop or just give him credit for shooting the ball well. But if he gets back to his level of passing and his level of creating with the defensive engagement that you saw against Portland, then his season can turn around a little bit better than it has been. But that was a fantastic Josh Giddey game in 22 minutes. Was a plus 46. The best plus minus on the team for Josh Giddey, for this team, was Josh Giddey at plus 46 as he battled out the rest of the starters. I think that this was one of SGA's best games simply because he scored 12 points in the first quarter, and you look at that and you say, well, what's the big deal? He always scores double-digit points in the first quarter. He didn't play the entire first quarter. He only played 10 minutes, and so he was still in that 10-minute window able to get 12 points, and he still, while only playing 21 minutes the entire contest, got 31 points with 4 assists and 5 rebounds. He got a block as well in this game. Shot 73% from the floor, 1 for 3 from 3, 8 for 8 at the free throw line. The free throws starting to change a little bit for the Thunder overall. I mean, you saw Josh Giddey go for 3 for 3, SGA go 8 for 8. The really big issue has been Chet Holmgren still missing free throws. And I'm not sure if this is anything at all, but you watch him and you watch his hot streak at the charity stripe and watch him now holding the ball a lot more at the free throw line. Is that anything? Is that nothing? Is he overthinking it? I don't really know. But hopefully for the Thunder's sake, because Chet Holmgren does do a really good job, especially for a rookie at getting to the free throw line. Hopefully for the Thunder's sake, it does turn around. He starts to make those freebies. But SGA and Josh Giddey were awesome. So were J-Dub. Everyone was awesome. You don't win by 60. You get up by 60 if everyone's not playing awesome. We'll talk about the strange ending to this game and what the Orlando Magic game means for Oklahoma City. But first, I want to tell you right now about our good friends over at BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Look, it's the new year, and you can be thinking to yourself, new year, new you, but what about just improving upon things you already do well, or helping take yourself and empower yourself to go to the next level? This is where you get the helpful, positive coping skills and allow yourself to set boundaries and just really make yourself the best version of yourself. You can do all of that through the wonderful benefits of therapy, and BetterHelp allows you to enjoy those benefits of therapy. Maybe you've been thinking, hey, I want to try therapy. I want to get into it, but it's just too difficult. It's too difficult to carve out the time in my busy schedule, my busy life, family, job, my life, just everything. It's hard to go sit down at an office. That's okay, because BetterHelp is entirely suited around your schedule. They're entirely flexible with you. It's online at BetterHelp.com/LockedOn. What you do is you fill out this questionnaire and you get matched up with a licensed therapist Now, you can switch therapists at any time if you think that you can match with somebody better and vibe with somebody better, and that's at no additional cost. Until you find the one you feel comfortable with and find the therapist you want to continue with, then you can settle in and get through your time with BetterHelp at BetterHelp.com. You can go find your therapist for you with no extra charge until you find the right one. That's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. 10% off of your first month with that code. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. We're back on the Lockdown Thunder podcast, on the Lockdown Podcast Network, your teams every day. J-Dub, incredible. Only one missed shot, 21 points. Lou Dort got hot in the third quarter. Chet Holmgren, 19 points, 4 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 steal. We've talked about all those guys. Those guys deserve a lot of credit for the way they played, but there's not much you can say because we know what those guys are capable of. They've been having great seasons to this point. You're not going to learn much about them playing against Portland, frankly. Did learn, though, asked Chet after the game if he ever found out. If you remember last year, Chet Holmgren got 4 player votes. You know how the All-Star game, you get voted on with your peers, with coaches, and with fans. He had 4 votes from players. He never found out who those 4 votes were from. Jalen Suggs got a vote, and he only got 1. I have a feeling, sneaking suspicion, that Jalen Suggs voted for Chet. Chet voted for Jalen Suggs. I'm going to try to ask Jalen Suggs about that against Orlando. We'll talk more about that Orlando game coming up, but let's wrap up this Portland game. Against Portland, Keyontae Johnson had one of the most fascinating games that no one's going to talk about. He played in the blue back-to-back on Tuesday and Wednesday. And on Wednesday, the Thunder held out Ousmane Dieng from that blue game. And the blue only had 8 active players. 8. So Keyontae Johnson played heavy minutes in a game that went to overtime for the blue against the Rio Grande Valley Vipers. With only 8 active players, Keyontae Johnson had a large task and no Ousmane Dieng there to kind of help to shoulder the load a little bit. And then on Thursday, Keyontae Johnson gets his largest runway in the NBA. He plays 17 minutes in his 3rd game in 3 nights. He plays rotational minutes on Thursday, in terms of just like bulk minutes. 17 minutes, if you average that throughout the course of a season, you are clearly a rotational player. He played rotational style minutes on Thursday after playing starter minutes Tuesday, Wednesday, and going to overtime on Wednesday. Playing 3 games in a row is awesome. That happened with Tre Mann back in 2022, whenever he went to the Vegas showcase, then came back for a game with the Thunder. The Thunder have done this before. I asked Mark about kind of the process of that. He gave a really good answer. You can go find it on Twitter at Ryland_Styles. But basically, he mentioned that, they did not expect to play Keyontae at all 17 minutes. They called him and told him he'd be active tonight and told him that, that they want to work him in. But by no means did anyone think that it would be 17 minutes on the back of what he did with the Blue this week. But he scores his first NBA bucket, goes 2 for 5. That first bucket, by the way, if you know Keyontae Johnson, he had the scare at Florida, the heart issue, where he's now had a heart foundation set up, and he's been awesome working with that group. And then after Florida transferred to Kansas State last year, was a wrecking force for the Wildcats, helped them turn their program back around, helped them get to the tournament, and was one of the stories of the tournament, and then was drafted 50th overall by the Thunder. His time at Florida coincides with Tre Mann. Tre Mann assists on his first NBA bucket for his first points. Saw him walking after the game with the ball, and Michael Martin asked him if he had to fight and win for the basketball. He said no, because he let Kenrich Williams go get the ball for him. Obviously very excited for his first NBA bucket. But I think that Keyontae Johnson, using this as a springboard to a bigger topic, I think Keyontae Johnson is really going to be able to bust down the door of NBA opportunity, because he has checked all the boxes in the G League. He is a fantastic transition threat, the best in the G League in transition. He is a fantastic option as a cutter because of his athletic ability. Doesn't necessarily get to show that a ton in the G because of just the nature of the team and the construction of the team right now with OKC Blue. But I think that he can be a fantastic cutter. He's still shooting 40% from 3, still shooting 40% on catch and shoot looks. Offensively, he has it. Plus, he has a little bit of post up to his game. He's one of the best post up players. I don't think that'll be a part of his Thunder career. One of his best post up players in the G League. You saw him in this game attack a hard closeout, get to the baseline, and get to that floater. He's really good at shooting at the rim, really good at shooting threes, and averages 7 rebounds a game. And even though his size might not lead you to believe that he can clean the glass, he really uses his size well. He's able to box out. He's able to put a body on somebody. And as he collects 7 rebounds a game, he also generates rebounds for other players because of it on the longer rebounds that go out to guards, which the Thunder have guards who can cash in on those opportunities. So Keyontae Johnson has played so well. He's a really good defender in the G League level. Of course, the G League is set up for being higher scoring. We're not going to dive into the G League semantics right now, but it's set up for totally offense. He does a really good job of defending even in that space. I think get even better in the construct of the Thunder, kind of universe with Keyontae Johnson. I think that he's going to need opportunity in the NBA, and January is going to be the time to get it with all these back-to-backs, with all of these kind of just games blocked together. 5 games in 7 nights is going to be very, 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 very tough. With that being said, I'll be very curious to see if he goes on the road trip to the West Coast after this game against Orlando, because I think that his time is coming sooner than later, and I think that he can be a very, very, very productive player in the NBA. I also want to talk about Tre Mann real quick. Tre Mann, we can talk all about garbage time, but Tre Mann can't check himself into the game. Like he can only go into the game when the team puts him in. And every time the teams put him in, if you just watch him, he looks head and shoulders above where he was last year. He looks way more calm and way more playing at his own pace this year. Way better vision, way better passing ability. The level of passes he's able to make now with the sheer velocity on the basketball to get it to the spot quickly, to anticipate where his teammates are going to go, which is a very tough skill just in basketball, but an even tougher skill when you're not playing a lot and getting to have that on-court experience. So I think that you can surmise from that he's done his job in the film room, so to say. But every time he's gotten a chance, he's been really good. And he's improved his defense by a country mile from where it started at. I don't know when it'll swing back to Tre Mann to play and try to prove it in more meaningful minutes. The one time it has against Houston, he was one of the best players in that game. It was a terrible game. It was a forgettable game. It was a game that the Thunder did not like anything about, but he was one of the bright spots in that game against Houston, and Houston never they lost. But he can't help it. He's playing in garbage time. So we can add the qualifiers that all we want to about playing in garbage time. That's not his call. What is his call is the vast improvement he's made year over year from last year to this year for Oklahoma City and for just himself as he continues to venture out. I think that facility may just gave the Thunder a ton of quality minutes in those 9 minutes. It wasn't like, it wasn't obviously high pressure minutes, but just focusing in on him and taking yourself away from the scoreboard, taking yourself away from the competition level. He looked better at just surviving in the NBA. Like he looked better at just not being overwhelmed by the level of athletes he was sharing the floor with. And so that helped him out offensively and defensively. Offensively, what he's capable of as a passer. I think that he'll continue to round into form as a scorer. And from the day he signed until now, I've continued to say that he knew what he signed up for. I've continued to say that the second half of the season in January was going to be a time for him to get rotational minutes. So far, it's playing out that way as he gets some looks here. So far, so good with Micic kind of rounding into form. It was Portland. It was a blowout. This game against Orlando, I think, could be really fun. Orlando, though, is on the second night of a back-to-back, and they have a pretty lengthy injury report. Obviously, having just played Miami down to the wire, too, in an emotional game. Paulo Banchero already tweeted out about like how he was kind of feeling down and sorry about what happened against Miami. He might come to this game extremely motivated, but just as of right now, these are the players that the Magic are missing: Wendell Carter, Markelle Fultz, Gary Harris, Kevon Harris, Jet Howard, Joe Ingles, Franz Wagner. That is a laundry list of a CVS receipt of injuries. So the Magic will be shorthanded. They'll have to play a lot of their guys in more of a stress test scenario, not to kind of balance their rest on the second night of a back-to-back. Obviously, could miss some high caliber guys if none of those guys get upgraded between now and tip off. For the Thunder, they truly have zero injuries, like zero. No one's with the G League team. Nobody's hurt. So the Thunder are going to have to make 3 healthy inactives about 30 minutes before tip off. We'll find out who those guys are. So it'll be fun. We'll be here to recap it all right here on Locked On Thunder. So make sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcast from, including on YouTube. Follow me on Twitter and Threads at Rylan_Styles. And also, if you're at any Thunder game in Section 104, we have stickers to pass out. So come collect one if you want. So until then, be good and be good to one another.